in Blueprint for Disaster.
It was a warm spring Saturday in a quiet town in the Netherlands. People had no idea that a small fire in a nearby warehouse was about to trigger the biggest blast in the country since World War II. As firefighters rushed to the scene, a crowd gathered in the streets around the warehouse to watch the show. The compound contained 100 tons of fireworks. The explosions that day would kill 22 and injure hundreds. A shocked nation demanded answers. Did fireworks really cause this massive explosion? Or was there something else hidden in the warehouse compound? What started the fire? Was it an accident? Or something more sinister? Saturday, May the 13th, 2000. In Enschede, a small town in the Netherlands, it was a spectacular spring day. The streets and cafes were full, and the sun baked the town from a cloudless sky. The Dutch Mapping Authority had a clear view of the area that day. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the first signs of trouble appeared. A few wisps of smoke at the north end of town. They were rising from an old industrial quarter, now at the center of a residential suburb. Suddenly, fireworks burst into the afternoon sky, attracting a crowd of onlookers. Local cameramen Harriet Poorts and Jack Huygens were also drawn to the scene.
We got a fire and a free fireworks show. I said, who sets fireworks off? What's crazy guys doing that?
Harriet and Jack's pictures would come to play a crucial role in unraveling the tragedy that was about to strike Enschede. Firefighters were already on high alert. An arsonist had been setting fires in industrial buildings over the previous few months. The firemen rushed to the S2-E fireworks warehouse. But as the fire engines got close, they were blocked by a crowd of onlookers. Johan Bosch was one of the first on the scene.
En de mensen die weigerden gewoon. Het was zo'n mooi schouwspel om overdag vuurwerk te zien.
Police finally pushed the crowd back 300 meters. Danny de Vries, another local cameraman, searched for a vantage point. Nobody thought that a clear view of the fire would put them in the path of an explosion.
And everybody was just standing and laughing, and yeah, it was like a kind of reunion of the neighborhood.
A photographer with a reputation for risk-taking, Marcel van Nieuwenhoffen, went inside the compound looking for an exclusive shot. That shot would cost him his life. Harriet Poorts and Jack Huygens took their cameras to the roof of a nearby building for a high-angle shot.
Gerrit is staying here.
I was over here.
And I was over there, in the lower level. And Gerrit is filming here.
Not more smoke than it's coming from a barbecue.
Andreas Schulte led a second team of firemen into the storage compound. Initially, he thought everything was going to be okay.
En het brandje, wat de inschatting is zo goed als onder controle.
He had no concept of the real dangers. The S2-E fireworks facility held the biggest cache of fireworks in the Netherlands. There was one main building, plus 16 steel shipping containers, and 7 reinforced concrete bunkers. Fire Chief Andreas Schulte and 2 firemen were standing on this bunker. And a lone firefighter was on this roof. The primary fire was burning in the central assembly room of the main building. Gerrit and Jack were shooting from this rooftop. At the police line was Danny de Vries with his camera. Inside the compound was Marcel van Nieuwenhoven with several firemen who had no idea what was about to hit them. Exploding fireworks ignited dozens of small fires all over the compound. By now, the co-owner of S2-E Fireworks, Ruud Bakker, had joined the crowd in the street.
En dan zagen wij een witte rookwolk in de lucht hangen. Nou, laten we die kant maar eens oprijden.
He was the only person who really appreciated the danger of the situation.
Waar zijn jullie in godsnaam mee bezig? Ik zeg, we moeten hier per direct weg.
Back on the roof, Andreas Schulte heard something terrifying.
Toen begon er een beetje gerommel. Er kwam steeds meer vuurwerk uit bunkers weg. En aan de rechterzijde van mij, vanuit de containers, begon het een heel vreemd geluid te geven. Nou, mijn gevoel zei toen op dat moment van, we moeten hier weg.
He and his two colleagues retreated from the roof. Down below them, the other team was forced to abandon the blazing bunker. Marcel van Nieuwenhoven, still hoping for his scoop, was hanging back. 100 meters away on the rooftop, the two cameramen saw no warning signs of the pending disaster. The crowd on the street continued to swell. But inside the compound, the firemen were running for their lives. The scene for a disaster was set. The S2-E Fireworks facility was about to explode. The Dutch town of Enschede was on the brink of disaster. A blaze that firemen initially thought routine was about to turn deadly. The fire was burning inside the main assembly room of the S2-E Fireworks company. In the compound were 23 storage containers packed with fireworks. Gerrit Poorts and Jack Huygens shot the action from a rooftop here. The exploding fireworks were starting more fires in the neighborhood. Just to the northwest, a large brewery had caught fire. The brewery contained 8,600 kilograms of highly toxic ammonia. From a small corner shop, manager Willy Wogenmuth looked at the sky and feared the worst.
Zag ik dat zwarte rook komen, toen zei ik nog van, nou, dat gaat niet goed komen, zoiets. Want ik wist wel dat daar een opslag zat van vuurwerk.
Suddenly, a massive ball of flame leapt from one of the storage containers, sending firemen, including Bert Connahorn, running for cover.
Daar ben ik gaan vluchten en ik denk zo achter de ladderwagen. Samen met een collega en een politieagent.
One fireman remained in the open, standing alone on a storage container. An explosion ripped through the compound, shocking Fire Chief Schulte.
Die was op zich zo heftig dat je in één keer, ja, die auto is een halve meter opgetild.
Blijf filmen, Gerrit, hè?
On the rooftop, Gerrit and Jack took the full force of the shockwave.
I fell down and Gerrit is laying below here on the ground at one hand above.
I had my camera something like this. I made it open so I was looking like from what's going on, like this.
On the streets below them, panic ensued as the crowd was pelted by flying debris. As photographer Marcel van Nieuwenhoven tried to flee, the shockwave threw him to the ground. Danny de Vries kept shooting.
I run across the street to a house over there, and I'm standing in the garden in front of a window, and turn around again and keeps filming.
The co-owner of SE Fireworks watched in horror.
Net op dat moment dat ik dus naar buiten toe wil gaan, is die eerste ontploffing. Er komt van de overkant, ja, waarschijnlijk is dat de grote openingsdeur geweest van de buurman, van de bouw. Die komt daar naar voren toe en drukt de gevel in. En daar raak ik dus ook gewond.
Bleeding and afraid for his life, Ruud Bakker took flight, caught on tape by Danny de Vries.
Dat is ook het moment waar je me ziet lopen in beeld, waarvan iedereen zegt van hij is op de vlucht.
Later, it was suggested that he was fleeing the scene of a crime. Inside the SE Fireworks compound, the blast was far more intense.
Toen de explosie over was, dacht ik van het is weer rustig. Zag ik aan de overkant in een woning zag ik dus een man liggen.
The injured man was intrepid photographer Marcel van Nieuwenhoven. As Bert Connahorn moved in to rescue him, he was blown off his feet. A second blast, 6 times more powerful than the first, ripped through the compound, setting off an explosive chain reaction in the storage containers.
Ik realiseerde me vreselijk dat ik onder de puin lag. De eerste waar ik aan dacht was zee en lawine. Ik dacht, ja, maar dit wil ik niet, hè. Dit is kap met einde die weer is, dus ik wil hier gewoon onderuit.
Around the corner, shop manager Willy Wogenmuth was right in the path of the blast.
Ik lag in één keer achter in de kantine. Met haar zo onder mij dat ik zo haar vast had. En echt 4, 5 meter door de kantine heen geblazen.
Closer to the blast site, Danny de Vries was unhurt.
And I didn't know that the camera was still working. And of course, the images are not really good, but you can see everything around.
In the rubble, fireman Johan Bosch spotted a colleague staggering to his feet.
En ik keek om me heen en dan was het allemaal rook en heel onbeschrijfelijk. Ja, niet begrepen wat er aan de hand was.
Dan loop je dus in het donker de ladwagen verlaten. Er staat daar een keer de zon, er staat gewoon oftewel een zwaar van een collega die aan alle kanten niet bij zijn hoofd rond, helemaal grijs en rood. En ja, je ziet zo'n beetje in de film. Ik heb er eentje liggen zien. Dat was Bert.
Ik ben mensen kwijt. Ik ben met 5 man weggegaan. En bij de brandweer is het zo, ik kom ook met 5 man terug.
The firemen went back into the smoke and fire and found Theo Hesselink unconscious in a pile of rubble.
We hebben hem 50 meter verplaatst ongeveer in een veiliger gebied. En ik heb geprobeerd te reanimeren, maar de broeder kwam en zegt van hou maar op, dat lukt niet meer. En toen ging voor mij eigenlijk ook een beetje het licht uit.
A seismograph 32 kilometers away registered the second blast at 1.8 on the Richter scale. House windows shattered up to 1 kilometer away. Thousands of civilians and several firemen were unaccounted for in the immediate aftermath.
As soon that Jack and I realized what was going on, we had that but there was a smell in the air, and we almost immediately said to each other, "This is the smell of death."
Fires burned, and the sky blackened with smoke and ash. In what was left of his shop, Willy Wogenmuth confronted a scene of utter chaos.
Alle ramen overkant. Er kwam ontzettend veel rook het pand in. Mensen waren aan het gillen. Boven zag je mensen liggen.
The street was choked with wreckage. Dead and injured people were everywhere.
Er stond een ambulance midden op het kruispunt. En toen zag ik nog één broeder bij lopen. En die had het zo druk. Die hebben mij zo'n koffer gegeven. Ze zeggen, red je er maar mee als je dat kunt. Dus we hebben die mensen verbonden.
Willy Wogenmuth would be cited for bravery on this day. As would Krish Ganeshi, an off-duty policeman. He was on his way to his mother's house just 150 meters from the explosion.
Toen het gebeurde bij de eerste
Chris immediately started to rescue people. He rushed to a group huddled in the doorway of a burning house.
Toen riep ik ze, want ze hadden zich verscholen. Op het moment dat ze naar de piep hoorden hier, ik begin te lopen met een hele bal. Als ze waren blijven staan, had je 6, 7 mensen geprobeerd die het niet overleefd zouden hebben.
Before the end of the day, 24 people would owe him their lives.
Ik dacht dat er
I thought it was an airplane crash.
Police detective Ed Rangshire heard the explosions from home. The ensuing investigation was to consume the next 5 years of his life.
En heb gekozen om door te rijden naar het bureau van politie. Om daar met anderen het totale onderzoek, de totale hulpverlening op gang te brengen.
Ontzettend kwaad ben. Ik wil weten wie mij dit kunstje geflikt heeft. En wie daar geweest zijn.
Emergency services worked quickly to get the injured to hospitals in Enschede and nearby towns. But a firestorm raged through the whole neighborhood, spewing out a plume of smoke visible 30 kilometers away. Firemen couldn't get close to douse the flames. The town of Enschede was in shock. Hundreds had been injured and 22 people were dead. Thermal imaging cameras vividly showed the huge fires burning in the aftermath. Enschede was scarred. 400 houses torn to pieces. Many factories and shops laid to waste. 2,000 people suddenly homeless. As the flames died down, anger and disbelief erupted. What caused the double explosion? Could it have been sabotage? Arson? What was inside the compound that blew up with such extraordinary force? To Detective Hans Kamperman, Enschede looked like a combat zone.
Het deed meedenken aan Kosovo, waar ik geweest ben kort na de bevrijding daar. De reuk van de brandende huizen, de grote vernieling, de hitte die er toen nog was van ook de zon, maar ook van de stenen die nog de warmte uitstraalden. Dat was ontzettend intensief.
As bad as it was, the disaster could have been much worse. There were 66 seconds between the two explosions. That gave hundreds of people just enough time to run for cover. And the fire at the brewery was smothered before it spewed masses of highly toxic ammonia into the air. It was days before the blast site cooled down enough for rescuers to conduct a search. No survivors were found. As memorial services for the victims were held, investigators faced colossal pressure to explain what had happened.
De enorme informatiestroom om die goed te kanaliseren. De enorme hoeveelheid video en foto's om dat op een juiste manier vast te leggen.
It would become one of the largest investigations in Dutch history.
We hebben het onderzoek verdeeld in een...
We divided it into a tactical investigation, technical and a financial economic, and a leadership investigation.
Bestuurlijk onderzoek. En
In the beginning we had 100 investigators.
Aan het werk.
The aerial photographs, taken coincidentally just hours before the disaster, enabled investigators to assemble a detailed plan of the neighborhood. To document the evidence, specialist photographers took a series of 360-degree panoramic images of the disaster area. Transferred to a computer, the digital images could be manipulated to show all aspects of the site. The enormous scale of the destruction raised the question, could fireworks alone have done this? Public interest was fueled by hundreds of newspaper photos and videos broadcast on TV. In the absence of hard facts, conspiracy theories arose. The compound was a secret arms depot. The disaster was the work of terrorists.
Met al deze spookverhalen die de ronde deden over de vuurwerkramp, werd het voor de slachtoffers ontzettend belangrijk dat er iemand komt die op korte termijn antwoorden geeft.
Consultants Dave Boers and Bas van de Heuvel were hired by the families of the victims to conduct a private investigation. One of their specialities, video analysis.
Er is dus iemand geweest die in de beelden van Gerrit Poort meent te zien hoe een raket opstijgt op het terrein van SE Fireworks. En ik moet toegeven, toen ik ze voor de eerste keer zag, dacht ik ook, dat ziet er echt uit als een raket.
But a frame-by-frame computer enhancement of the puzzling video offered results that weren't so mysterious. Using the size of buildings as a reference, they estimated that the rocket would have had to be 12 meters tall, lifting off at more than the speed of sound. Impossible.
En als het een 12 meter lange raket is, is hij veel te zwaar om zo snel te versnellen. Dus dan kom je bij de conclusie, het was geen raket.
In fact, it was an exploding piece of debris, trailing dust and smoke in its wake. Other forensic experts took rock, dirt and cement samples from the bottom of the blast crater for testing. They were looking for traces of a bomb, high explosives more powerful than fireworks. One expert was Jaap Vierheim, an explosive specialist at the Netherlands Institute of Applied Scientific Research.
The central building was manufactured of reinforced concrete, and when it failed, so there were big chunks of concrete just thrown over hundreds of meters, many pieces up to 600-700 meters even.
Samples were sent to the Netherlands Forensic Institute, where they were tested for high explosives using chromatography, a technique that can detect small quantities of foreign particles in soil samples. The tests were negative. With no high explosives found, investigators had to determine if fireworks alone could have caused the explosion. A massive explosion at the SE Fireworks warehouse devastated a suburb of Enschede in the Netherlands. Investigators combed the debris looking for traces of high explosives, but found none. Against the odds, it seemed the evidence was suggesting that this disaster was caused by fireworks alone. But what kind of fireworks? A United Nations Committee on the Transport of Dangerous Goods classifies fireworks according to their explosive capacity. 1.4 is the lowest category, not considered a major danger. 1.3 fireworks will burn fiercely in a fire and should not be approached without a heat shield. The more powerful 1.2 variety will produce small explosions and some projectiles. 1.1 fireworks are the most potent. They can throw out dangerous amounts of debris. Firefighters are advised to stay well away and under cover. SE Fireworks was licensed to store only the lower-rated fireworks. But investigators believed that something much more powerful had been stored in the compound. According to explosives expert Jaap Vierheim, the first blast had the same force as 800 kilos of TNT.
The last one, the major one, was about 4,000 to 5,000 kilograms of TNT.
It was the biggest explosion in the Netherlands since the Second World War. An audit of the company's books indicated there were no high-rated fireworks in storage. Could the paperwork be trusted? Jan Stecklenburg investigated SE Fireworks on behalf of its insurance company. He went to the source of the fireworks, a Chinese factory, where he found a crude assembly line.
They go to the bunker, they pick up 4 kilos of gunpowder from the bunker, they put on the table, and with the little comps, they fill the nutshells.
The nutshells that hold the explosives are used as measuring cups for the raw materials.
It's all pure handwork.
And a bigger bang can be supplied for more cash.
It's not difficult, if you're looking for that, to go to China and to get fireworks that has more gunpowder in it than what is allowed.
And if you create your own label, they'll stick it on for you. No questions asked. In the Netherlands, investigators got an unexpected insight into the trade when they seized a shipment en route from China to SE Fireworks. The contents were listed as 1.4 grade fireworks, but tests told a different story.
Quite clear that it was much more stored of a more severe class than related to the license tells us.
Those field tests were compared with the damage at the blast site.
A lot of 1.3 reactions and even more severe, even 1.1.
Investigators concluded that SE Fireworks had criminally violated its license on 2 counts. The storage facility was overloaded, and it contained fireworks more powerful than was permitted. A Dutch court found SE Fireworks owner Ruud Bakker and his partner Wilhelm Patter guilty of storage and license violations. They were fined and sentenced to 6 months in prison. But those convictions didn't answer the bigger question. What had triggered the explosions? At the epicenter of the blast, the concrete pad that supported the main building was pummeled a meter into the ground by the force of the explosion. Steel reinforcement was bent out toward the surrounding buildings. From thousands of photographs, hours of videotapes, and statements from over 2,000 witnesses, investigators were able to put together the sequence of events on the day of the explosion. The first place to catch fire was the main fireworks assembly area. It sent up a plume of smoke, and fireworks shot off in all directions. Next, fires broke out in the surrounding storage containers. The first explosion happened when those containers detonated in a chain reaction. And 66 seconds later, the rest of the compound blew up. But what had started the initial fire that triggered it all? The investigation focused on the fire's point of origin inside the main building. This was where the fireworks were assembled from raw materials: gunpowder, accelerant, and firing tubes. When police interviewed employees of SE Fireworks, 2 theories emerged. They mentioned that the building had been rewired by someone who was not a certified electrician. This person was never identified, but could faulty wiring have started the fire? Workers also reported dangerous handling practices inside the storage area. they reported that nitrated cotton, material that is cut into wicks for fireworks, had been stored in racks beside an electric heater to dry. Nitrated cotton is extremely sensitive to heat. It's meant to be stored wet, wrapped in plastic. It could easily have ignited if placed too close to a heater. However, both these theories were impossible to substantiate. The scale of the devastation was so massive that no evidence could be found for either theory. But maybe the wreckage itself would reveal other clues. Peter de Bruin from the Netherlands Forensic Institute was brought in.
The challenge was to find out what happened there, what caused the first fire.
High-rated fireworks, like the ones that ripped Enschede apart, are extremely volatile. They're meant to be stored underground in hardened climate-control bunkers. Exposed to too much heat, there was a strong possibility they could self-ignite. When Peter de Bruin looked at photographs taken before the explosion, something struck him immediately. The massive skylights in the roof of the fireworks assembly building. On the day of the disaster, the sun was shining, and it was unusually hot.
This assembly room would go very warm, and fireworks might have out-ignited.
Could the ambient temperature in the storage area have caused the fireworks to ignite? Tests were run in the forensics lab.
We had determined that it would out-ignite only at about 165 degrees Celsius. So it's impossible for this material to out-ignite because of the sun shining through the skylights.
Investigators were stumped. Going back to their primary evidence, the police reviewed the thousands of witness statements and came to a startling conclusion. The fire did not start in the main assembly area. Several witnesses told Detective Kampelman they saw fireworks ignite outside the building moments before the fire started.
De plek waar het NLR met haar bevindingen kwam, waar het eerste vuurwerk de lucht in was gegaan, lag 20 meter voor gebouw G op een plaats tussen dat gebouw en de bunkers.
If the fireworks went off outside the building before the fire, they must have been set off deliberately. Now, faulty wiring, spontaneous combustion, or any theory that placed the point of ignition inside the main building had to be ruled out. Arson became the #1 theory, and the serial arsonist was still at large.
In de maanden voor de ramp vonden er brandstichtingen plaats in Enschede en omgeving. En dat waren voornamelijk brandstichtingen in industriecomplexen, industrieterreinen. Grotere bedrijven werden in brand gezet.
But the fire at SE Fireworks didn't fit the arsonist's pattern. He hadn't worked in residential areas before. He had lit every fire at exactly 11 p.m. And he had always left himself an easy escape route.
We look at the time difference. We look at the places. We look at the way the arson was done. For me, the difference were too big.
So the serial arsonist was ruled out. Investigators had to look for another suspect. They started from the two main criteria for a criminal investigation: motive and opportunity. When word of the investigation's changing direction got out, a wave of new leads came in. The insurance investigator on the case could only speculate.
Employees or some burglar or crazy guy.
Or maybe the owners themselves.
We looked at the owners' backgrounds, so it means you look at the financial stuff. Is there a motive?
A careful reading of the company books said no. SE Fireworks was a successful company, and there was nothing to gain from destroying it. After months of investigation, authorities were no closer to finding a suspect. They had established that the fire had started outside the main assembly area, and it was likely to have been set by a person, deliberately or accidentally. Wild theories had surrounded this case from the beginning, and now a new one emerged. Consultant Dave Burrs isolated a few frames of Herritt's footage that seemed to reveal a man dressed in white.
Zoals het heet, ging er het gerucht dat er op een dak naast het terrein van SE Fireworks mogelijk een persoon te zien zal zijn geweest.
A person still unaccounted for. In the blurry video, a man appeared to stand up, turn around, and then get blown away in the second explosion. Could the man on the roof have been the arsonist? Dave Burrs and his partner estimated the size of every object on screen. Then, they divided the distance the man traveled by the length of time it took him.
Dan moet deze mogelijke persoon beweegd hebben, verticaal met een snelheid van meer dan 130 km per uur. Nou, dat kan helemaal nooit een persoon zijn geweest.
In fact, it was a twisting puff of smoke from the exploding fireworks. Another dead end. The trail of what or who caused the terrible explosion at Enschede seemed to have gone completely cold. But finally, months later, police got a lucky break. A fresh case of arson led investigators to a local man, André de Vries, who'd been arrested for torching his own car. When they questioned him, police also asked de Vries where he'd been on the day of the explosion at SE Fireworks. Police believed that his alibi didn't stand up.
En hij hing een verhaal op die aan alle kanten rammelde, bleek achteraf.
In the initial investigation, police had pulled about 20,000 mobile phone records, looking for people who had made or received calls in the vicinity of SE Fireworks at the time of the disaster. Now that police had a suspect, they rechecked those records. It appeared that André de Vries had made a call immediately after the explosion. And before long, the web around de Vries drew tighter. Police seized his clothing as evidence when he was arrested for setting fire to the car. Among them was a pair of red shorts. And those red shorts drew a straight line right back to the SE Fireworks explosion.
We hadden een getuige die iemand had weg zien lopen met een kort rood broekje.
The shorts were sent to the Netherlands Forensic Institute for testing. Using techniques developed to analyze gunshot residue, the forensic team collected samples from the shorts. They were analyzed using a scanning electron microscope and an X-ray spectrometer.
We found thousands of very small particles with a very specific chemical composition.
Kwam ook voor ons bij donderslag bij heldere hemel naar voren dat er hele specifieke vuurwerksporen van evenementenvuurwerk in dat broekje waren aangetoond.
The explosive chemicals in de Vries' clothing were compared to the chemical residue embedded in the earth at the blast site.
The particles on the clothes were very similar to the chemical composition of the fireworks we found at the premises of SE Fireworks afterwards.
Then, the quantity of particles on the red shorts was compared with the quantity of particles found on the clothes of a fireman and several victims killed close to the blast.
On none of these clothes we found as much fireworks residues as on the clothes of this suspect. It was of a very different order of magnitude.
But the forensic evidence was even more damning. Fireworks contain two types of explosives. One charge propels the device into the air, and the other produces the colorful explosion. Forensic investigators found significant traces of both explosives on André de Vries' shorts. So police investigators now believed that André de Vries was in the assembly area when the fire began.
So something very strange must have happened there. Our conclusion was that this person must have been very, very close to the site of the incident.
And that made the owner of the shorts the prime suspect. De Vries told police he must have picked up the residue whilst watching a fireworks show on a recent trip to the Greek islands. But that story didn't add up either.
We zijn in Kreta geweest. De afstand tussen waar hij stond en waar het vuurwerk werd afgestreken was zo groot dat hij nooit daar enig spoor van in zijn kleding kon hebben opgenomen.
And other witnesses said De Vries was wearing trousers during the fireworks display on Crete. Police now believed André De Vries was at SE Fireworks the day of the explosion, either stealing fireworks or setting them off, when something went wrong. If one of the fireworks accidentally shot into the assembly room, it would have triggered the massive explosion. De Vries was arrested. In jail, he confessed to an undercover police officer that he was the one who had set the fire that started it all. A year and a half later, based on the evidence presented in court, De Vries was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. When he heard the verdict, De Vries went berserk and had to be restrained by bailiffs. It seemed that investigators could close the book on the case of the Enschede disaster. The fire was started by a firework set off in the storage compound of the fireworks company. The facility had not only been overloaded, but also contained fireworks more powerful than its license allowed. It appeared the mystery was solved. But was it? In May 2003, 3 years after the disaster at the SE Fireworks Company, the memories had begun to fade when the story was suddenly back in the news. André De Vries, the man convicted of starting the fire that sparked the blast, was back in court. On appeal, the judges ruled that De Vries' confession was highly unreliable. The court also ruled that there was no hard evidence that the explosions were the result of arson, and the explosive residue on De Vries' shorts did not put him at the point of origin, and that he was not in possession of the cell phone on that day. In short, the court ruled that there was no hard evidence that De Vries started the fire that led to the disaster. André De Vries' conviction was overturned, and he was released and awarded €125,000 in compensation. The men who led that police investigation were devastated.
En ja, het toch een soort schuldgevoel die wij hebben dat we het niet opgelost hebben.
Het heeft mij al 5 jaar van mijn politieloopbaan gekost, dit onderzoek. En de centrale vraag van wie is verantwoordelijk voor het eerste vlammetje staat nog open. Zolang deze vraag nog niet beantwoord is, denk ik dat het onderzoek voor mij nog niet gesloten is.
At the scene of the tragedy, there's no trace of the SE Fireworks warehouse. In its place is a memorial to the men, women and children who died there. 18 residents and 4 firemen.
Ja, de gebeurtenis is 5 jaar geleden nu. Het heeft mijn leven inderdaad wel heel erg veranderd. Ik was destijds onbevangener. Ik denk nu veel beter na.
It also had an impact on the way Andreas Schulte fights fires.
Ik wil de totale regie over zaken. Zaken die ik kan overzien, gaan er geen mensen naar binnen. Nou, en dat soort zaken heeft het mij in die zin gevormd.
Krish Ganeshi and Willy Wogenmuth were credited with saving more than 50 people in the aftermath of the disaster. Both were highly honored for their heroism.
In de eerste instantie heb ik een beetje afstand van genomen van het woord held en zo. Want ik heb daar gewoon gedaan. Ik vond het mijn taak. Ik was assistent-bedrijfsleider, dus ik vind mijn taak ook te zorgen dat het allemaal goed verloopt.
Gerrit Poorts, one of the cameramen who shot the explosion, struggled with depression afterwards. And he still thinks about the news photographer who was killed chasing his scoop.
Sometimes we told Marcel, you're taking so many risks. And he said, well, let me take my risk. When I'm going to die, I hope it's in a fire. And that's what happened to him, fortunately.
With the encouragement of the firemen, Gerrit went back to shooting fires, which means that sometimes he films his son, Johnny, in action.
He's a firefighter now, and we are extremely happy with that and very, very proud that he's a firefighter now. Unbelievable.
The Dutch have rebuilt from the rubble of the massive explosion that tore this town apart. But fireworks that once symbolized celebration in the Netherlands now have a more somber meaning. They're a vivid reminder of the catastrophic chain of events that changed the face of Enschede forever.